from the moment I started playing, I wanted to call the game, and I think it was genuinely from sitting in the back of the commentary box as a kid and listening to Dad. The KO subscription cuts off right at the moment that he's kicked. This would have been his first goal in AFL. That would have been what it was.
No.
So left that morning to go to the World Trade Center, and literally in the cab on the way down, the first plane hit.
The famous 2008 Celebrity Grand Prix car race, which doesn't exist anymore, I don't think.
And I went around that corner and got T-boned, yeah. And which is sort of funny, you know, you're in a small car until you're upside down on the roof and the petrol's dripping through it.
All right, Darce, today we've got a very special guest. We've been very excited for a very long time. Superstar player, superstar media contributor, and now dominating the business world. Luke Darcy, welcome to the dos&d show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Good to be
Very
here.
excited to have you here.
Thanks.
We're pumped. I mean, I have to put my hand up, a fellow doggy lover. So I could talk doggies all day, mate. But we're just talking. It's your first kind of year outside the media landscape, and it's been nice.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Grand final day rolled around a few weeks ago, and it was 12 months of not doing any media, or probably from the age of 17, I've sort of been full-time in the footy industry, either playing and then stepped straight into doing media full-time. And having your weekends free for the first time has been seriously enjoyable, and obviously still genuinely connected to the Bulldogs. So dialed right into that, but I haven't consumed a lot of media, particularly footy media, since. So it's been a pretty interesting, fun year.
So you didn't have trade radio on, and not listening every day like the rest of us, lovers.
Even on my best day, I don't think I ever tuned into trade radio. But I loved the game. But I was never sort of that obsessive consumer of that sort of stuff. And you probably have to do your homework, and then if you're calling the game, and that was the part I probably enjoyed the least. But I think I've had enough to last a couple of lifetimes, so I'm not missing it, to be honest with you.
Despite, so obviously not consuming it too much, but now that you've stepped away, do you have any observations from now looking at it from a different hat? As I know you haven't consumed a lot, but purely as a consumer for the little bit that you have, how does it feel when you kind of listen back to how it's kind of going?
Well, I always felt this great privilege to be lucky enough to be employed in an industry from the youngest possible age I wanted to be part of. I wanted to be an AFL footballer from the age of 5. When I was 17, I wanted to call games of footy. My dad was a caller of footy in South Australia. I used to sit in the back of the commentary box, and so I've always sort of had this is what I'd love to do. And then you think, how lucky are you to have spent up till 50, your working life, getting paid well in an industry from a kid you wanted to be involved. So it's not lost on me how lucky and how privileged. And I love all the great friendships and all the great connections. That to me is the joy of the whole thing. You look back and, to play AFL for 14 years, have these lifelong friendships, and then, a bit longer in the media, you end up with another batch of lifelong friends. So totally grateful and privileged. I suppose to me, I just always saw the positivity in footy. I saw the joy in it. There's so many great stories. There's so many people doing great things, and I gravitated to that. I think we, can tell the negative stories, which we have to. You got to cover it fairly and honestly. I just never had that much interest in the stuff that was clickbaity or gossipy, and so I think I was probably the right time to end, because it's sort of not been something that's ever, been something that's given me a lot of joy. And so there's so many great positive things going on, and you probably gravitate to that.
It's more negative than it has ever been, like you said, purely because it's it sells newspapers, it gets clicks, and that's what us as footy lovers and consumers, we mentioned trades, like no matter what the rumour is, we'll click on it and we'll look at it. But as part of that too, because your son is obviously playing as well, if there's that negative attachment to it, you don't want to be involved with that with Sam.
Well, I think you got to have the perspective again to think, how lucky, he's 22 years of age, he's paid incredibly well to play a game he loves. He could not be more lucky. So I'm a realist, and if you're not performing, and that's part of the nature, and so it should be. I just don't think we need to be a slave to the American and the UK, the tabloids there, where it's just so extreme. And so do we need to mimic that in Australia? I still see us as this small island. I still see AFL as this community thing, and the people are great. You just meet outstanding people. Yeah, if you're out of line and you've made a mistake and you deserve a clip, absolutely. Not sure if you want to go around the block to be trying to say the loudest thing for a click. That's just, I don't think that grows the game. I think you look at Drive to Survive and Formula One racing has gone through the roof through telling brilliant stories. I still think that's the path I would go down if we had a choice. Is more of that and less of the clickbait.
So how does it go now? Obviously, you're a second generation Bulldog, and now Sam's a third. But with their hype with Sam and how well he's playing, and the endless ceiling that people talk about his potential and where he's currently going, how do you see it from his shoes with the enormous pressure as a father, but then as a lover of the game?
I think it's hard to separate when you're someone's dad and have an unbiased view. It's impossible. You're so attached and you care so much. It's hard to have anything apart from a biased view of it. But again, I just think of the privilege of it's what he loves doing. How lucky are you to do it? Surrounded by great people. I know that environment really well. I always talk to Beck about whenever footy finishes for him, he's going to have benefited so much. There'll be ups and downs, there'll be injuries, there'll be criticisms, there'll be highs. That's all part of it. I think, you do it all again. I just tend to focus on the stuff that's joy, which is the 99% of it. Your worst day in football, I always felt, even when you're injured, you're getting paid well to go and train. That's what someone often does as the highlight of their day. So I think you have a bit of perspective. We're proud of him. I think he's a pretty relaxed sort of individual, and I think he takes it pretty well.
Heard you speak about on another platform, and it was the day, I think it might have been during COVID, and you were driving Sam into the club for that first time, and it was like this moment where the realisation, I think it was before he was drafted or was on the verge of it, and it was, holy shit, like, I can't believe this football club it's gone through your dad, yourself, and now it's actually happening to the next generation. Can you maybe talk through that day and driving Sam into the club, if you remember it?
Yeah, I remember really well. He'd been there before and, been around the club as they have the academies, but I think it looked like he was likely to be a player there. And I was probably just emotional through my dad's lens. They were incredibly close, my dad and Sam, and he lost his filter a bit with his grandson. He used to pump him up around anyone that would listen, which wasn't normally his style, my dad. And I just thought, God, he would love to have been here this day, watching him walk in. It might have even been his first day at the club, I think, full time. And so, I just sat there for a moment and thought, God, Dad was here in 1962 on that same patch of grass in the western suburbs of Melbourne, spent so much of his life, and his lifelong friends that I got to meet when I came across, and these great sort of players and great friendship with Johnny Schultz, and got to meet E.J. Whitten, and then to see this 17-year-old kid walk out and have that same privilege, pretty lucky thing to do.
Now, is it true that when Sam, I think, kicked his first goal, you were watching at home, I think, with your wife, and perhaps the streaming service you're watching might have got turned off by accident by a third-party user? Is that true or false?
I think there's some truth in that. This is a classic me on the house. Stuff breaks down. It's normally my fault. And I have no capacity to fix any of it. And it wasn't his first game, but it might have been a final over in Perth in his first year. I think he played or something like my dates and times are certainly one of his earlier games. And, these days, the kids have got the phone. And my mother-in-law was there. The KO subscription cuts off right at the moment that he's kicked. This would have been his first goal in AFL. That would have been what it was. No. So the update's coming through on the phone. Beck's screaming at you going, have you not paid the KO? Going, do you reckon I might have been out of a foot? And then, the kids, as they do, have handed out their subscriptions. So some other unknown person's logged in and I have no idea how to fit. My mother-in-law's turned on me. Can't even watch TV at your house with our grandson playing. So I was copping it from all. And all you want to do is just watch the footy. I couldn't get it to restart. Got it to start in time for, I think, the game to finish. So it was a low light.
How did you go, I guess, calling the game for such a long time as a fan of the footy club, a former player of the Dogs, but then, you're calling big games, big moments. Obviously, you've got 2016 and the involvement there as well. But you hear so much, especially in with other commentary as well, around you got to be careful around what you say if you barrack for that team. And I think we had Richo on a while ago, and Richo spoke about that too in 2017 with the Tigers. Was that a challenge throughout that journey?
I think if you're just being authentically yourself, to me that's again the community of AFL football. That Richo crying on the boundary line when the Tigers won is one of the most beautiful moments in AFL football, and I was lucky enough to work with him for a long period of time. He's just one of the great people of all time, Richo. To think that isn't an image you want to see. He kicked 800 goals for Richmond, and he cares that much, and it's that good a moment, and so I think you want that, when Geelong are winning and Billy Brownless is, going nuts in the box, and that's how Billy celebrates. And 2016 when you're calling the Bulldogs, and you just saw the emotion and the connection to it. I think if you were trying to not be yourself, that would have, been pretty ridiculous. And I think everyone knows where your heart is, and I'm sure that polarises fans. The funny part always for me was you're calling a Melbourne versus Fremantle game, and you get 100 messages saying, I can tell you're barracking for Fremantle, you hate Melbourne. It's like, mate, that's the funny part. I think when your team's losing and the callers calling goals going through, I find it irritating now, and I know all the calls. I want to text them and go, BT, shut up, for God's sake. All he's doing is calling the goals that are going through. It's not as though you can choose when that happens, but a bit different when Sam started playing, and that conflict became a pretty hard one.
What was that like, calling Sam?
I was really reluctant to do it, and I said I wouldn't do it. And it's a hard one, isn't it? You've accepted a paycheck for a long period of time, get paid really well to do it, and they say, no, we actually generally, you need to do this. And so radio was okay a couple of times because you felt like, but these days there's a camera in the radio box, and I just felt all you want to do is just watch him. Didn't feel like I could do it well. Channel 7 asked me to do a game in Perth that he was playing, and I said no about 10 times, and I thought, geez, you either got to get out or you've got to honour your contract and do it. So I regretted it the second there was no sweet spot where, and you're calling it and you didn't feel like you were compromised. So nice to be able to give him some clear air now.
Yeah, you can't win in those situations. So we'll come back to your playing days. We want to touch on that at some point. But that transition from playing into the media, Dos was telling me this morning, was something that you were actually consciously aware of. It was your goal to then go into the media and become a commentator. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was bizarrely, from the moment I started playing, I wanted to call the game. And I think it was genuinely from sitting in the back of the commentary box as a kid and listening to Dad. And it was a subconscious thing. And then I would consciously think, I'll come and make coffees for the guys at 3W or volunteer to go and be around a call. And so I sort of had, over the time of my play, even when I was getting a game at the start, I think my teammates thought you're an idiot, but I just was interested in it, and it was something I wanted to pursue. And so when I did my knee in 2005, I probably knew a few more people than others. Dave Barron put me on Channel 10 as a current player, and got to call 15 games, I think, that year when I was out with an ACL. So, when I eventually finished in 2007, I probably had done a lot more than a few others, and it gave me a pretty good start.
My first thought goes to the 5-minute warning, Channel 10. That was just the best days. I used to love watching the footy on Channel 10. But did you call it? Tell me if I'm wrong. I heard this on Will Anderson's podcast, but did you used to commentate yourself when you were playing at a stage?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
In my own head, I would be, and I think sometimes it would then come out, Darcy's going for the ball, he's going to take this, mate. And then you turn around to your opponent and go, who thought you were genuinely insane. But the commentary of the game was going through my head a lot when I was playing it. Didn't actually pan out all the way I would have liked it, the way I was at times. But I think there was just sort of, if the game was on and I'd turn the sound down and just want to call the game, if I was on my own. So it was definitely something I was keen to pursue, and why I'm so grateful to have been able to do it for so long.
Yeah, we've got some memorable moments we'll bring up at some point of your commentary. But again, even the move to breakfast radio, I mean, you were part of this ultra successful, Triple M hot breakfast for so many years. Did you ever see that, being as part of your life?
No, that wasn't on the plan at all.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was an incredible thing to do for 11 years, and it was a call from Eddie Maguire. You don't live in Melbourne and play footy without getting to know Eddie. And from the early days of the footy show, spent a fair bit of time with Ed, and hey mate, I'm starting this breakfast show. You come and do it. And Had no idea.
So
what
Eddie
it was.
poached you.
Eddie
Yeah.
was the one behind it, and that ended up being this incredible, chapter. And again, lifelong friendships with Ed and Mick Malloy and Will Anderson, and we took that show to places where multiple Olympics and Super Bowls and dawn service on the 100-year anniversary of Gallipoli, and so always loved the chance to do things that were pretty unique and special. So it was a good fun time.
What were some of your more memorable moments of that? Like, I didn't know that. Hearing you speak around the certain big moments that you guys took the show to, what are some key things that stick out in your mind for you?
I mean, Ed was a genius at big ideas. We've got to be there. Whatever's happening in the world, we should be there. So if an Olympics was rolling around, he was going to get there one way or another, which was awesome. Or a World Cup of soccer in Brazil, which we did, which was hilarious. But often what would happen, Ed's the busiest human being on the planet, bar none. Something would come up in his diary. So it'd often end up being just Malloy and I would go and travel to Brazil for the World Cup. He's an extraordinary person to travel with. He likes a cold beer, Mick, on a warm day, and he's just incredible fun to be around, and you're generally going to have a good time if you. So World Cup, that was one of the great events I've ever been to in my life. To be there for that experience. Went to the Super Bowl in New York, and just a lot of fun. I mean, Ed's idea was a great one. You do breakfast radio, all these people that have got pretty interesting opportunities to do things in life, and then you chain them to a desk in South Melbourne, you don't do anything, you haven't got great stories to tell. Keep doing great things. And so if you went away for a week with Malloy, you're going to come back with some interesting stories. Some you could actually say on air, others you can't. But and then the dawn service in Gallipoli, again, Ed, this is a 100-year anniversary. To be invited to be there on that day is one of the most memorable moments of that trip. And then we'd get away with, Carla and Ed's families. Beck would come. We'd broadcast out in New York regularly just to get in a better time zone and find a way to make it fun and interesting. And that was why we lasted so long.
This episode with Luke Darcy is going very well. I'm loving it, mate. But we have to quickly stop for a sec to thank FBH, Fleet Plan Hire Solutions.
Absolutely. Luke Darcy is about to share with us what he did off the field as well as on the field, Dos. And I think that's a pretty good analogy for Fleet Plan Hire Solutions. On game day, when you need them, they are there. But of course, off field, for customer service and reliability, no one's better.
Earth moving, everything about it, they do it. So you're talking
Yes.
all the biggest projects, the smallest projects, the machinery that you might need for those, they can provide it for you.
That's right. And like we said, all the legalities, all those little nitty-gritty things that you don't want to deal with, they'll take care of it for you. So visit fph.com.au today to find out more information.
Back to the episode with the Duke.
Can you talk about the famous interview with the then Premier Daniel Andrews? Because, I mean, at the time, incredible, because you basically said what most of us were thinking, and you had the balls to stand up and ask these questions that nobody else was asking. So I would be really interested to hear about the morning of. Did you have the plan? And then the backlash may be the wrong word, but what came afterwards?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. It was middle of COVID, so we were actually broadcasting from our own homes at that stage. So it was just Eddie and I. Eddie was broadcasting out of his house. I was at my house as well. And you knew he was coming on as a guest the next day. And it was, for mine, it was sort of middle of the lockdown period, and he wasn't available on other platforms. He hadn't made himself available to questions apart from the standard press conferences, and there just wasn't people asking, I thought, with reasonable questions. He'd been into our studio before that, I would say a dozen times, maybe more, maybe a few less. So we'd certainly spent a lot of time around him, and Eddie knows everyone. Eddie's connected to everyone, and so he certainly was connected to Daniel Andrews. And so in the middle of COVID, it's a great guest to get on the show. And I think he was used to at that stage going to forums where he would not be asked questions that he didn't want to be asked. And so, yeah, I felt like you needed to do that in a respectful way. And I think some of those things haven't aged well from his perspective of just not having any open mind or any flexibility. And so, yeah, I had a sense that there was going to come with some some feedback. But if you're sitting there in that forum, that if people know me well enough, would know that if I felt strongly enough to ask a question, I wouldn't be afraid to do that. It was such a tense crazy time. You have people from, you hate old people and, we're going to never come to your pub ever again. You're getting sort of, that sort of mail. And then others saying, well, at least someone's asked a question and I think you did it in a reasonable way.
What was it? Did Eddie know that was going to happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, if you're sitting in a studio next to each other, you're normally going to be able to go, hey, mate, you ask the first two, I'll ask. And we never ask, what are you going to ask? If there's enough trust, you've done it for 10 years. That was getting interesting that year because I certainly had a view that it was crazy that we were keeping our kids out of school for so long and it was getting to be extreme, and I'm not a scientist or an expert, but it just felt like the measures that were being taken early on were way too extreme, and we should find out. Let's ask some questions and get other people on. There wasn't a wide range of views, so I think there was some natural tension in that. But Ed's one of those people. You can have a great debate and a great blue with Ed, and he's over it within a second. So I never had a fear that we'd lose a friendship over it, and I think that's what good. Used to get together, people with different backgrounds, different ideas. You come together and you probably learn something, maybe find some ground in the middle. I think that art's been lost. I don't think he sort of thought I was ready to load up on the premiere that morning. So his face on the screen was a little interesting. I think he was a little bit like, hey, maybe calm down a touch, mate. But once you go, you've got to keep going, don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, do you have? And I've always wondered, do you have pressure from above when it comes to anything political? Because, you may have your own political views, but the station may have theirs or it may not, but you might have to push a narrative of around the time of, I don't know, mask up, stay safe, everything like that that we're hearing from radio stations, but then you go out and question these things. Do you get pressure from the top down or anything like that, or they just let it go?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think I'd never, ever felt that in the 11 years I did Breakfast Radio. I never had a direct, hey, you're not allowed to say that. I think that was probably Mick Malloy and Ed had done 20 years of radio prior to that. Good luck telling those guys what they can and can't say. It'd be pretty short one-way, as it should be. You shouldn't be filtered based on the opportunity and that. And I think that's probably why that show was successful. I don't think anyone thought that was going to be filtered. And I probably just learnt in that environment, have a go. If you're useless to everyone. If you genuinely believe something, you've done some homework, and you've got a reasonable question to ask, you should ask it. So, is mainstream media filtered by special interest, and are people able to speak freely against a sponsor? Or, the short answer is no. I'm sure that's why forums like yours are going so well, because you guys can independently say whatever you like. And if you work for a big media organisation and one of their sponsors putting in $50 million and you want to have a go at the sponsor, I suspect you're going to have an issue. It's commercial TV and radio. That's the nature of it.
Yeah. Has there ever been a tickle to get into politics at any kind of level from yourself?
In no shape or form ever at all. But I loved in that 11 years, we would have just a steady flow of the most influential people in Australia come through, and the Prime Ministers regularly come in the studio, and the Premier, and so I love that. I am a bit obsessed with US politics. It's crazy and wild, but I love reading about it. So I think far from pretend to be an expert, but if you've got a reasonable question, ask it. And that we had enough interesting guests to be interested in it, but in terms of doing it for a job, you couldn't think of anything worse.
Yeah. So changing tacks a little bit, we've mentioned the US and you've mentioned New York, and there's this famous, I don't know what the word would be, it's the folklore or potential story, I don't know, myth about you being there on the day of 9/11 in New York, and Michael Jackson involved, Nathan Brown involved. Love to hear the story and get all the facts straight.
Yeah, isn't interesting, isn't it? Because yes, we were there. There was about 6 of us, all teammates at the Bulldogs, and Nathan Brown was one of them. Tony Liberatore was one of them. Simon Garlick, the CEO of the Fremantle Dockers, was there. Craig Ellis, one of my great mates. I'm going to be leaving someone out here.
Is Craig Ellis the one that's absolutely dominating in the business world?
Yeah. He's had an interesting chapter post football and in a whole range of issues. One of my mates, I was with him a couple of weeks ago in the UK, and he's kicked on since we finished. And my brother was living in New York, so about 4 of us were staying with my brother, and then Nathan Brown and Libba were staying separately. We went to the US Open tennis final where Leighton Hewitt beat Pete Sampras in the final. So amazing day, end of season. I was talking to Libba about this the other day, and he denies this, but it's 100% true. He brought a Sharon to the US Open final, like a classic Australian bogan, and then kicked the Sharon out onto centre court to Leighton Hewitt, 100%. And Leighton and I think it might have been Jason Stoltenberg was his coach. They were kicking the Sharon. You don't see it on the screen, but they were kicking because he's a obsessed AFL fan.
Pros.
And word got out. Hey, there's a few the AFL boys here. Maybe come to the after party with Leighton. And in fact, Pete Sampras's trainer was Brett Stevens, was a ex-Fitzroy player and had been with Pete Sampras forever. So he was in the other camp, and we had this amazing, great night having some beers with all the Australian guys that were in New York, and John Fitzgerald and those guys celebrating this 20-year-old who beat Pete Sampras. It was a brilliant night. So it was the next day, I think it's the next day or close enough to it, and we'd had a couple of huge nights, and so we thought, we were literally left that morning to go to the World Trade Center. Left my brother's apartment, who'd been living there, and said, we're going to go down and go to the top, the 2 biggest buildings. We'll go to the top, and we'll meet you for lunch somewhere in Midtown. And that was the last, he heard of us that morning, and literally in the cab on the way down, the first plane hit. And, I remember the 3 or 4 of us in the cab, you just assume this, tragic accident, light aircrafts, there's planes flying around everywhere. No thought that there was. So we said, take us down there. We'll go on the other tower. And so we got to, what felt like a couple of blocks away, or close enough anyway, and the cab driver just said, mate, I'm out, no more, I'm not. And already they'd started to close down some streets. So, we had this horrific experience of then, as the streets were blocked off, the second plane hit while we were a few blocks away. And, what you saw that day, you're never going to forget, dozens of people jumping out of the building, and you're standing there with people who had loved ones in the building who were, you can imagine how hysterical they were. And then to see those 2 buildings sort of fall down in front of you was just crazy. And so we literally were walking back up because everything had shut down, and you couldn't, mobile phones were pretty new back then.
Yep.
And so you couldn't get a mobile phone to work. And this is the weird and true part of the story as well. That we didn't speak to each other, I reckon. We're just stunned, as you'd imagine, and thinking, got to get back up tomorrow. He was, imagine what he's thinking, we've gone down to the World Trade Center, so he was beside himself. And our families are ringing, going, where are the boys? And he's not wanting to say they're down there somewhere. And there'd be millions of people that had similar stories, but it was strange to be there. But literally the next time we spoke, we're walking past, I think it's the Waldorf Astoria or somewhere famous in New York, and you hear these screams and you're all on edge. And it was Michael Jackson walking out of the Waldorf Astoria, and there were some young girls around, and as true as I'm sitting here, the next word I heard, Michael Jackson's walking past, and Libba said, "Hi, Michael." And I hadn't spoken. I'm going, I've just seen the 2 biggest buildings in the world fall down, and Tony Liberatore's talking to Michael Jackson. This is the most bizarre day I've ever seen in my life, but it happened. For one of the saddest probably experiences that you've ever seen or been through. I mean, there's a bit of laughter at the end of it, but I mean, from your perspective, is that a day that lives with you like forever? Like it's something you can't even put into words. No, the fact that everyone knows where they were on that day, everyone's got a story, haven't they? It's one of those moments in time. You know when that call came through. I'm not sure how old you guys were, but if you saw it on TV, you just remember where you were, and we were there, and we literally couldn't get back for another couple of weeks. And this is a macabre thing to say, but the Americans, initially, it was the sun was still shining and there was fundraisers everywhere, and we were, 6 AFL players in New York. So there was an amazing feel in America. There were no bodies at that stage. There were no funerals. And so I can't say it any other way, but we actually had a great 2 weeks because Australians were friendly to Americans, and there was this great sort of spirit of going to a few fundraisers and going out and doing what you did. My brother lived there afterwards, and when the funeral started and the weather turned, he said it was one of the most depressing places, as you would imagine, you could possibly expect. But it was pretty remarkable thing to be that close to.
Do you remember being afraid? Like when buildings are falling down and there's planes going everywhere and no one really knows what's going on or how much more attacks were coming. Do you remember feeling like you said you got to get back to tell your mate, but are you also fearing for what could happen next?
Oh, it was a bizarre thing to be on the ground in. And I remember, you followed it so close. You still do when there's an anniversary and you go back and you see some new vision and you're trying to picture exactly where we were. But the Americans, we were totally unprepared. By the time the buildings had fallen down, we walked back. There was a armed US marshal of some description on every single corner of Manhattan, of the whole grid. And there were F-16 fighter jets doing laps of Manhattan. So, and tanks were rolling down. So I don't know where the tanks came from, but there was an amazing amount of police presence in a short space of time. But you'd still know we didn't have news. We didn't have those days a mobile phone to ring or streaming on your phone to catch what was going on. So you're literally going, what has happened? And it was a 3-hour walk back to get to the TV screen at my brother's house and sit down and have an understanding. So, plane had come over and you go, there's another one going to be hit. You had no idea what was happening. So not scared, but just like, this is going to be one of the most extraordinary things that's ever happened, as it was.
Maybe let's go to, because that fits pretty well with your playing career at the Doggies. You captained the footy club, played in, what was probably a really successful era throughout a period of time in the late 90s as well. You went through a couple of transitions at the club with some different coaches. But from your perspective now with having a leader, your organisation, all about leadership, captaining the footy club, what does that mean, captaining the Doggies?
Yeah, look, I came to a pretty screaming halt after being made captain in 2005. I did my ACL around 6 or 7 against Geelong that year, so I didn't really get my feet under the desk too much on it. But I think always I just look back and Scott Wine, he's a great friend of mine. He was the reigning Brownlow medalist when I walked through the door as a 17-year-old and our captain at a young age, and just think of the great influences that you had around you, and they were many really high quality people. And so, to look back and you could have been lucky to play one game, to be there for 14 years and to feel like you put everything you possibly could into it and you didn't leave anything behind. There's a feeling of satisfaction in that, and you hope that you had a good influence on the next generation and that you're overall just left with some more positive energy for the Bulldogs going forward. So again, I just always look back and feel incredibly lucky to have been part of it.
Well, it's funny when players like yourself go into the media after post-career, and you're almost known now more for your media than you were your playing days, and people forget how bloody good of a player you were. Your favourite going into a Brownlow medal, you've got all these incredible moments that you've had on the ground too. Do you feel like, I don't even know how to ask this without putting words into your mouth, but do you ever want to tell people how good of a player you actually were?
How long have you got, guys? I can go for 2. Look, I love it because to me that's the best. You get into the media but as we're saying all these, it's just you're cannon fodder for your mates, and I find that the most amusing stuff. And so their favourite story is me, allegedly throwing a party for myself the night of the Brownlow, which they love, which there's almost no truth in. They love. All my mates that have probably been on this podcast with you about how terrible you were as a captain, or whatever the stories are. I just find them funny. I just I don't have any. I was far from a great player. I feel comfortable because I felt like I was lucky enough to get the maximum out. You could have done your knee in your first year and not played again, and no regrets at all. I don't look back and think, God, you could have got more out of it. I like to play like my son. That would have been nice if he could have played the way he plays. He's taken it to another level. But yeah, so long as you feel like in anything in life, you gave it your best, you compete as hard as you could. If you're a good teammate and you valued your mates, then I love the banter post footy. It's highly amusing.
Well, could we then go? Well, then we've got to ask about one certain friend of yours, Nate Brown. I'd love to hear about your relationship with him. And again, you talk about truth, but how much truth was when he decided to head across to Punt Road that all connection lines were then stopped?
Yeah, it's not a great reflection on me, that actually, but that's definitely true. He moved in with Leon Cameron and I, his first day, and that was one of the great things is that new recruits, and Leon took me in, and you want to take others in. So you always had this great love of Brown. You still do. I say to our mates that post footy, he is the greatest life improver out of anyone that I play with, and it makes me smile to see one how good a person he is. How it's just hard work for me pumping up Brownie in a positive way. I should be going the other way, but Christina, his wife's one of the great people. He's got 4 brilliant kids, and and people have got to see the weird, awkward, socially inept person that we know that would that translate to other people. But I think people see the charm. He's the most socially awkward human being I've ever met, but has the least amount of care about it as well. And we used to sort of joke around having to send notes back for just conversation starters to Christina, his wife, just so she wouldn't have to deal with the awkward silence. But there's a humour there that people get, and he's quite right. And when he left, I was just upset. As a mate, as soon as I heard he was being flown around in choppers with Clinton Case, I'm like, he's gone for sure. He's the perfect candidate to fly a chopper over a land deal that he ended up losing money on. But we could see the journey. He was an extraordinary player.
Yeah,
about to be in the peak of his prime. We saw a bit of that before he broke his leg. Prior to that, he could have been one of the elite players, and we could see that. He didn't want to lose it. It felt like he had. This is me, the 2% of me that gets really shitty with these things. It's like, mate, just stay. You're gonna have a better life. There's some joy in being a one club player. So I had that conversation with him, but he was always going to go, Nate, for cash.
When you've got these 2 shows, you're doing Hot Breakfast and then you're calling footy. I was going to say, you've got the Friday Huddle and then you're calling footy. So you're almost playing these 2 different characters. You've got the Friday Huddle, which all of you lads have this great chemistry. There's banter, there's giving shit, there's jokes, there's really taking the mickey out of each other. But then you then have to transition to a Saturday night to call the footy. Can you tell us about the characters that you guys play and how you go about managing, the 2, I guess?
Yeah, I've never felt like. I think you're in trouble if you felt like you were playing a character.
Yeah,
and I think you can see that in people who are genuinely trying to if you're trying to be who you aren't, you're in real trouble. And that's, again, I look at Nate and that's him. Like he's all those things. And there's a brilliance in that because you're not having to try. And so, yeah, the Friday Huddle compared to calling foot on Channel 7 is just a very different environment around how loose you can be with those guys and the things you can get away with saying that you couldn't get away with on a Saturday night, on Channel 7 footy. So you're not as though you're shape shifting, you're trying to be someone you're not, but you've got to straighten up a touch on the host broadcaster on a Saturday night. And whereas we could do 2.5 hours pre-game and not for 1 second talk about the game and just be hanging shit on each other and stuff that made us laugh and amusing. And you felt like you're probably going, to me, it's the closest you felt like what a locker room felt like.
Yeah.
You come in and you're always on edge going, shit, I'm not in the conversation here. That means I'm in real trouble. The boys have found out that I've, doing yoga with Bear or whatever it might be. And you go, that's going to be the next hour and a half. And you sort of put the helmet on. But I loved that. I always felt like the best of that was just aimed at each other. The worst of it was probably aiming too much of it outside. I think 99% of the time we just loved hanging shit on each other because then it was equal and it was fair and you probably lost your way if you're going too hard at others. So that was a fun thing to do. I really enjoyed it.
Just going back a step when you're talking about, again, the loyalty you had at the Dogs and being a one club player, did you ever have a serious offer put to you from another club? And if so, can you share what was put to you and how seriously you may have considered it, if that happened at all? So
I grew up in Adelaide. I was born in Adelaide and moved over. Dad was father-son, but went over to coach South Adelaide. So there's always that chance that would you go back to Adelaide? I suppose. Realistically, there was no chance I was going back to Adelaide. But there was a moment, I think, when Gary Ayres was coach, they just said, wanting to meet, here's a serious offer to go back at whatever age it was. My godfather was the general manager of footy at the Crows at the time, and so I think out of respect for him, I sort of felt like I'd had to have the conversation. So that was probably as close as it got, but I wasn't moving back to Adelaide.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, on that, I guess, staying a one-club player, today's day and age, we see recently trade period, there's captains requesting trades, there's big-name players that are wanting out of their clubs, that have, been at their clubs for a long period of time. You mentioned, with Nate Brown and the one-club player aspect and how special it is. And do you see it kind of becoming a rarity now, or is it becoming less of a badge of honour, you could say?
Yeah, I don't know. I see Joel Selwood, finish a one-club player and what he was able to do. And, Shane Crawford in the end to finish with a premiership, and he would have had opportunities to go everywhere that he would have wanted to go being the player he was. I don't know. I just think you end up with a lot out of it in life if you Marcus Bonampelli as a one-club Bulldog is incredibly valuable. Now, there's money left on the table in the hundreds of thousands of dollars by doing that, but I just have this view that life probably turns out a little better potentially with that if you've and some clubs cut players as well, and so it's a two-way street. So I think if you had the chance to do it, I think for me that was always a really special thing, to know you had a home, to know that was where you're going to be. People would laugh at that and say, "Hey man, how old school are you?" Of course we need change, and we do, but yeah, I think if you've got a choice, I still think it's a pretty valuable thing to do to play for one club.
Have the Dogs ever got you involved to try and poach a player from another club, just to have a conversation as a club legend or anything, or keep a player on the books?
Yeah, I think when we were playing, you're always in that game. You're always wanting to welcome someone that you could try and attract. Obviously, that game's gone up a lot higher now. And the short answer, no, I haven't directly gone and got involved with a potential player coming. But I think, yeah, everyone's trying to sell their club, aren't they? Trying to sell the people that are around and the success it can be. And it's a pretty competitive thing to do.
Well, how much has the club changed? We know it's changed a lot, facilities-wise, but from your perspective, still being involved, what it was in the 90s to now, can you maybe describe what it was in the early days compared to now?
Yeah, there was always a live chance when I turned up in 1993 that you weren't going to be in existence. And 1989, the AFL did everything in their powers to run the Bulldogs out of town. And it's one of the... Peter Gord and Irene Chatfield, they had $2 million to raise and a handful of days to do it. There was no way they were going to... The people of Footscray, the most working class suburb of Melbourne, out of their own pocket save the club. And so, yeah, we had times where you had to put 15% of your wage back in so the club could stay afloat, even in our area. So you always thought, how stable is the club going to be forever? And now you walk out there, there's a $100 million facility. Clubs made $1 million profits every year for 10 years. It's an incredibly strong 65,000 members last year, paying absolute maximum amounts of the salary cap in the women's program, the men's program, and the footy cap. So I'm really proud of our club and what it's been able to do against the odds without these massive strategic advantages or a massive home ground advantage. And I think club's never been better placed and had as good a decade as it's ever had.
Yeah, we're all very fortunate. Only, was it last month or the month before, we had Terry Wallace come in and share that whole backstory, which is incredible. But when I see footage of Year of the Dog, I mean, you talk about facilities, looked quite chilly out at the Winton Oval. But, Jared, I just want to get that photo up because speaking of cold, this was an image that took our interest and took the whole footy public by storm a few years ago as we wait for this to... there we go. Now, this glove incident.
Hasn't aged well, has it? It just hasn't aged well.
Now, talking about backlash and copying it from your mates, what happened on this particular night? I see Lingy there. His hands are exposed, but yours.
I think Sam Lane's a bit further along.
Well, this is why you get a chance to finally actually tell the truth on some of these things. It's a horrible look, isn't it? That was as cold a night as you've ever. And Malloy was on the panel that night too.
Oh, was he? Yeah.
So he was there, and so wardrobe came out, and we're broadcasting out on the ground. And people think I packed, my leather gloves I've got from home.
That's what I'm assuming.
Was ready to go. And the wardrobe came down with all these sets. So everyone's wearing them in the first seat. So I'm hosting, so I've got my head down. And Lingy must have seen Chris Scott coming over to do the coaches interview and go, I'm not been on a panel with leather gloves on and Chris Scott. So unbeknownst to me, everyone else takes them off.
They're incredibly shiny. That's what I noticed.
It's just a horrific look, isn't it?
So everyone had them on.
There was a point where everyone had them on, and then there's a point where only I've got them on, and so you deserve to cop it for that, don't you? Like, it's just not an image that you're going to be proud of at all. But
How long did you cop it for? Because it seemed to just. I mean, you wore them in the Legends game too, so it lasted a long time.
Oh, those things have got a 25-year lifespan.
Yeah, they do.
You get remembered for one or two sort of foolish, naive things to do, but it's sort of it makes me laugh, isn't it? Because had it been someone else, I would have been piling into them 100 miles an hour and going, are you kidding yourself? What sort of tool turns up and wears leather gloves? But I've got to wear it.
Oh, that's hilarious. I didn't think you were going to go with that or not.
Oh, no, I was going. Oh, well, the other one, again, we were so curious at the time. How many people on the street would stop you and just ask you to say that again?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's the backstory to that, if you've got some time, is a bizarre one as well.
Please, I would love to hear it.
It was in the middle of the Essendon drug sale, and I'm at Channel 7, and the tension around that was enormous. You're doing breakfast radio and all these people that and James Hurd's one of the great people in the game, lucky enough to play again. You can see the stress those people are under. So Lewis Martin from Channel 7, he was running Channel 7, said, mate, we want you to do this big Essendon interview, and we've picked you out. You're the person that's got to do it. I said, oh, yeah. And I was thinking it was going to be Hurdy, because they'd want a recently retired player, or relatively recently, and Hurdy was going to speak. I thought, that'd be figure. I can't tell you who it is. If we tell you who it is, then it's totally under wraps. And so there was this weekend, we're down at Geelong. What it might have been far around from that time. And they were like, after the game, you've got to come straight to the RACV club in Torquay, and the guest is there, and he's been security, guarded in because we're worried that if, he's going to jump at the last second and not do it. But you're working with the Channel 7 equivalent of like 60 Minutes crew. What was Channel 7's...
not a current affair?
Tonight, or?
Oh, no, they had a rival show for 60 Minutes. And they were they're the hardcore... seasoned journos and that was intimidating, because I turn up and there is Dean Robinson, who was known as the Weapon at that stage, and you sit down with these guys and they've got all the legal terms around the list of drugs, what you can say, what you can't, and you're in a massive studio, green screen behind, so he's sitting down, never met him before in my life, no preparation, and for 2 days literally, with a little sleep, they just wanted to get this in the can to sort of go. And so the fact that was the worst thing that came out, say that again, like I was on edge the whole time because, one, I didn't know enough about it. I didn't know enough of the detail. I wasn't prepared. And for something like that, so you're going through trying to read reams of information on it in a highly sensitive era. And then they put up the sort of big backdrop of James Hurd, which I think, was probably really unfair to him. And, I sort of left that experience going, I wouldn't do that again unless I had more information, or, you ran a high risk of getting yourself in a situation you didn't want to be in with that.
Yeah.
The other one that I definitely wanted to bring up was the famous 2008 Celebrity Grand Prix car race, which doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. Or,
I don't think so.
Or it might have just come back maybe after Drive to Survive or something like that. But there was a certain crash that caused this cancellation, I guess, of the event ongoing, and it was you.
I haven't covered myself in glory over the journey, have I? You look back and you go, it's just an accident waiting to happen.
You think it's a roast for Luke
This
Darcy.
is why we asked you to boast about your playing days when we gave you the chance.
No, I'm easily roastable, aren't I, when you look back? No, that was, again, it was a funny year, because it was soon after retiring, and they decided to do a year with the Grand Prix with all ex-athletes. So Glenn Archer, Nathan Buckley and I were the AFL players. So I'm not into motorsport, so I was a bit like, oh, yeah. one of the most fun things I've ever done. The best week, and then you had Robbie Madison, who's a crusty demon lunatic who ended up winning it because he raced karts as a Steph. The world champion surfer is just Steph Gilmore. Liz Ellis, rugby league players. So normally, what happens apparently in that race, because you've got without being unkind, people who aren't sports people, the field spreads out, whereas they put everyone together and the competitive genes kicked in and everyone was going cocoa bananas. And so the guy that put it on that year had actually bought these cars, these Fiats, and had imported them. He nearly had a meltdown because it was like a smash-up derby. We were scraping the side, people shunting people off the road. Robbie Madison, I think, had taken out a serious bet on himself because he looked at it and gone, I'm just better than all these guys. And so he cashed in and made a heap of money. But, Nathan Buckley's the most intense, competitive person on the planet. He's getting private coaching from Mark Scaife to get better to win. And you were racing like it was, the guy wanted to call the event off. Like he saw the first one and saw all the damage to the cars, tried to call it off, and the Grand Prix wouldn't let him. And I went around that corner and got T-boned, and which was sort of funny. You're in a small car until you're upside down on the roof and the petrol's dripping through. And you go, there's enough cars behind going, if I get hit here. So there was about a 6 second sort of patch. You're going, this is just going to be intense. And then I managed to get myself out and that was the end of the celebrity car race for 15 years. Cancelled, never to be seen again.
I want to touch on Aleda, but just before we do, just backtracking a little bit. When you went into the media, what kind of, you talked about being prepared or unprepared. What kind of things have you called over the journey of different sports, Olympics, Commonwealth Games that obviously is not in your wheelhouse, and how do you prepare for those kind of broadcasts? Yeah,
I got that lucky opportunity from Dave Barham, as a current player, and at that stage, current players hadn't actually called games and done special comments while they were still playing, so it was quite controversial at the time. But he was brilliant. It gave me an opportunity that I was really young and didn't really have the runs on the board to do, and then I got this call early on after I retired. Channel 10 had just bought the netball, and David White was the head of sport, and he said, "Mate, we really got this idea for you. We think it'd be great to call the netball." And I said, "No chance. Under no circumstances. It's how could I stand up there and do that?" And he convinced me it was a really good idea, and it was brilliant. Lifelong friendship with Liz Ellis, who was a champion, still is. Got to work on a sport I knew nothing about, but it gave you all these hours, flying hours, off Broadway a little bit, that you could make a few mistakes. And the Commonwealth Games that year in Delhi in 2010, Australia get beaten in double overtime against New Zealand, and Liz was calling New Zealanders cheats live on air. She refused to speak for last minute. Speaking about being competitive, and in a final game of the Commonwealth Games, packed house, all the athletes. One of the best sporting events I've ever been to. Yeah. They play for keeps at that level. It's the New Zealand-Australian rivalry off the charts. So, I think I didn't really branch out and put my hand up for too many other things. I had a week on the tennis as a very late call in and worked out that was a bad idea.
What year would that be?
I'm terrible on, but we're about to go for our summer holiday, and Hamish McLaughlin and Basil Zemplis and those guys were great at the tennis and loved doing it, and it was their thing, and I had no interest in. But again, you get this call, mate, it's the last time we're going to, and you're in that position where here's your footy contract, we love, you're doing that, you need to help us out. And so it was like 3 days to go. Oh, no, you get paid, but you're about to go with a family holiday for the year. We need you to fly to Brisbane for the week. But not only that, you've got 3 days to work out every Russian tennis player's name. And I'm like, this is just a disaster. This is knowing how bad it was going to be. And then I get there and you're actually calling ball by ball, and you're the host, and you got to work with John Fitzgerald. It was just one of the great people of all time. But I had the worst ever 10 seconds on air. And I think someone found it recently. It's as bad as you can. So there's so much going through your head. You're trying to, I knew tennis when, Boris Becker and Stefan Edberg were playing. That was the extent of my sort of tennis history. So they do this thing on Channel 7 in between the points where they push you out on court and you run out and you go, coming up next is Ed Berg and Boris Becker. You're watching tennis on Channel 7. So I'm 3 days of trying to scramble to read. So they push me out on the court. And I get out there and I look around. I look at the two people on the court. For $1 million, I couldn't name their name.
Oh, no.
So I'm going, and you're just hoping someone in your ear is going to go, it's, I can't even put it, it's Leighton Hewitt and someone else. But and the silence.
Oh.
And so I think all I managed after 15 seconds, I think I just said more tennis or something that felt like an hour and a half. And I was like, mate, this is the end of your tennis calling career.
Oh, no.
God. That's a classic. Oh. Well, a great kind of segue now to touch on your travels that you've just been on recently.
Yeah.
You've been to the UK, watched an amazing interview that you interviewed Mikel Arteta and Steve Kerr from the Golden State Warriors, and then Mikel, obviously the coach of Arsenal, and all about leadership. And I guess maybe you could touch on Aleda and the business world now since kind of working your way out of media.
Yeah, thanks for the chance. It's been always, while I was doing media stuff, always had some other projects I was always working on, and Aleda's 11 years old, founded with a great friend of mine called Matt Waterwitz, who we grew up playing at South Adelaide together, and from the moment we met, we were just dreaming about playing AFL. He was a champion of our junior teams and captained them all, and was drafted to Western in '93, the same year I was father-son of the Bulldogs, but broke his ankle in our last game together. And very short version of the story, Matt went on to be a great legendary educator, and we stayed great friends all the way through. And effectively, they were managing kids out of his school in year 10. And if you know Matt, he was going to be a great champion for those kids. He went to the principal and said, hey, we're not kicking these kids out. This is why I'm a teacher. And the teacher said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to look after them. I want them in my care, and I want to say in the curriculum. The very short version of that story, those kids were so engaged by the end, they all finished year 12, 80% go on and do tertiary education. And I just fell in love with the story, having 4 kids of our own, and just how do I help, how do I get involved? And we started this sort of business around getting teachers to connect and collaborate better on how to have better outcomes for kids in schools, which we still do. Right up until a month ago, we've still been in schools working on kids, but we eventually ended up in all these other organisations just through, normally with a parent would have a daughter or a son in our class. And so by the time COVID hit, we'd been in some really interesting places, including a lot of sport. Matt had been working with Cricket Australia, he'd been in several AFL clubs and NRL, and so we started with these groups of, the first group had Justin Langer, who was a coach of Australian cricket, Trent Robinson, legendary coach of the Roosters in the NRL, Don Pike from the Adelaide Crows, John Worsfold and Ben Rutten were doing the handover at Essendon, and Will Weaver was the Australian basketball coach. And those guys, still catch up, I think, 95 sessions later. Our idea was we work with great people. What if we put them together, non-competing areas? And they just generously started telling other people. The second group had Ange Postecoglou and Luke Beveridge was in that second group. And now we find ourselves in 20 countries, and over 600 people from all these diverse backgrounds come together in our Aleda forums to share. And Mikel Arteta and Steve Kerr at the real name-dropping end, great friends through their group. Their group, Chris Scott was in their group, Scott Robinson from the All Blacks. But we'll have, conductors of orchestras. I always think of Ben Northey, who lives not far from here. He's one of the best conductors in the world. With longevity specialists or teachers. So we love sort of these idea of bringing great people together. And so, it's been a great privilege. That was the passion to want to leave and do this full time. And we're really lucky to see the value of great people getting together and sharing the way they do has been a really joyful thing to watch.
Can you go just a little bit deeper into, because again, like we told you off air, we've had so many people that we know just rave about it that's been part of the program. But you say they come together, but what's kind of the structure, if you can take us behind the curtain as to what goes on in these high-powered, meetings? Yeah,
we make sure they're totally trusted, and you sign non-disclosure agreements because you want to make sure you can share openly. And each group is unique, and they take it to where they want to. And we think real life is probably more interesting than any case study. So effectively across the year, they'll meet for an hour and 15 a month over 12 months. We've got a team of these awesome facilitators that just host the forum and that people bring their real life world. And I suppose the joy is suddenly you've got 5 people that mightn't have been in your world before, thinking about you, thinking about your world, maybe challenging your thinking, maybe supporting your thinking. And so, as the community's got bigger, you just see this amazing opportunity for great people to get together. And I think there's a bit of a gap there where sporting people, creative people and business people haven't really had a space to get together. There's a lot of CEO clubs and those things which, again, we didn't set out to create. We just have found this joyful thing of you only get good stories when good people get together. You get degrees of great stories. And so people are busy, but I think to zoom out of your world and dial in with other like-minded people, I think is a pretty valuable thing. And we're really proud of how it's unfolded.
From a business perspective, you've obviously been in business a long time, in lots of other different businesses. How does this probably compare to, say, being invested in and running hospitality venues to now doing something like this? Like, it's very different. What's maybe the biggest learning you've had now with this new venture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, like anyone who starts something that's new, you just strap yourself in for just constantly solving issues. And when COVID hit in that business, like a lot of other people, we were going, we can't get to anywhere. This might be all over. But out of that, you create something you never thought you were going to create before. And so, because it's a new space and you're building your own team, it's unique and you're finding ways to scale something that you've started at that age. That some of the lessons from the other places, hospitality, transfer. And I think for me, if you've got a great partner, and that it's a bit like you guys running your podcast. It starts, you can see you guys got a great friendship and connection. So you didn't set out to create something as a money making venture. You started out because you wanted to help kids in schools, wanted to improve the way kids were looked after and learning in schools. And I think sometimes great things come not because you were sitting around going, how do I make a $1 million business? And it's just an extension of that. How do we get inspiring people collaborating together? Great things happen when you bring those people together. So for us, when you wake up in the start of the day and you start another group, it's a pretty joyful thing. It's a business. We need to pay our staff and our team and make it work. But they're pretty good problems to solve when you feel like you're doing something that's pretty worthwhile.
It's pretty just interesting listening because we've talked about so many facets of your life and you've gone in these different directions, and it's great just to hear how it all comes together. But do you think it's time to bring in the GCO?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
So, Jared, you bring in the GCO clubs. Now, it's time. We've spoken a little bit off air about the confessional, Luke, which is one of our segments here. But what Jared's bringing in behind you is there's a few clubs. This is a tri-light buggy at GCO Golf Clearance Outlet, which we're about to talk to you about in a minute. But that's actually the number one selling buggy in the world, isn't it, Darce? $200?
It is. So GCO Golf Clearance Outlet, no matter if you're just starting out in golf or you're a pro, they pride themselves on actually being able to fit you out no matter where you are at your golf level, for a really, really affordable price too.
Exactly right. So if you play golf every week and you're looking for a bargain, make sure you check out GCO. But of course, like Dos just said, if you're just beginning, they'll sort you out head to toe with tyre, clubs, everything you need.
All of it.
I've got another. I'm the worst tempered golfer in Australia.
I was going to ask this question.
It's coming my way. I thought I'd jump in before you.
Well played.
Before you do. No, I've got some serious issues on the golf course, and so to the team, I appreciate the buggy, but I need some work on. And as recently as 2 days
is this
ago,
your confession?
No, it wasn't going to be. I had another one actually, but maybe I'll change it to this because. What was the story? There's several golfing stories around me.
Like we said, there's one that, and I would hate for these beautiful clubs over here to end up in a lake or a river, but apparently there's been a few clubs that have just been on the receiving end of a Luke Darcy swing.
I'm a known club thrower, and it's embarrassing. I thought you were going to. I played around after the Delhi Commonwealth Games we're talking about.
Yes.
With Mark Howard and Andy Marr, and they reference and the beautiful Delhi golf course. And you have to have a caddy, and my caddy, I think I mentally unravelled that caddy by the end. And it got to the point where it was a beautiful guy, and he's doing the great, here's your ball, and you got 180 yards. And in the end, he was saying to me, it's 170 yards, Mr. Luke. Could be a 7-iron, could be a 3-iron for you, who knows? So even he was taking the piss out of me, which wasn't amusing me as I was throwing my clubs. But it's a massive ego thing where you play, for me, and Beck, my wife, she'd go, what is wrong with you, mate? Like, why do you think you should be good at this game? You play once a year. Now I've got some time, so I've actually put some time in.
Great.
And I'm unravelling. It's like I've got a tick. You know, I play like Scotty Scheffler on the range, and then I get out on the course and I start topping it, and I lose my shit.
Yeah. Really?
So it's not something I'm proud of, but that buggy's going to help. So thanks to the team, I need to work it out for sure.
So is that the confession or?
Well, you asked me about this in the I should probably get away with that, wouldn't it? But no, the one I'm in the confessional.
Because we've got a prize for you. So if that was the confession, we can bring out the prize now.
But if you want to grace us with another confession, we're not going to say no. We're not going to say no, Darce.
I was going to stitch myself. Well, yeah, I'll go with it because we were able to get away in our era of playing pre-mobile phone cameras with stuff that I think you probably get cancelled for now. And so I look back and think how lucky you were. And we, like the end of season trip was a joyful experience. And, I lived with a great mate, Leon Cameron, and travelled with Craig. We travelled every year. So we'd go on the end of season trip and then we would always tack on as many weeks as you could. So I was obsessed with travelling. I still am. I love getting away. And there's probably 100 stories that you just would, in the end, if there was vision of it, you're just going to look like a fool. But on this one particular night, we're in Florence in Italy, and we discovered grappa for the first time, which, unbeknownst to me, is almost 100% pure alcohol. and I was drinking it like some sort of hero. And we're at this bar, Space Electronic nightclub in Florence, Italy. My wife actually lived in Florence for 2 years. She's like, don't tell me you went to that. That's the worst tourist bar in the history. I said, well, if you've drunk a litre of grappa, it doesn't matter where you are at that stage.
Feels like Vegas. Yeah.
It was exactly like that. And part of this bar was they had a fish tank was the whole bar all around it. But in the fish tank were piranhas.
Oh, no.
And I've drunk enough and drunk everyone else's grappa because I thought I was going pretty well, to the point where, and I've got a vague memory of this, I'm lifting up the wooden top of the bar trying to fish piranhas out with my hand. And then my two great mates who could see this was going to end badly, and I may or may not have whacked one of them in the process of being tossed out by 6 Italian nightclub bouncers who just quite rightly thought, you are a fucking idiot, and deserved to get the suitcase punched out of, which I did.
Oh.
And woke up the next day and thought, that's a shocker, isn't it? That's one that's not going to stay, going to age well, but again, imagine if there was vision of it. Imagine if it was on camera. You can get away telling that story now. You're a 22-year-old idiot. You deserve, but I feel sorry for this generation that not a smart thing to do, was out of line, got myself into some strife regularly, but we're able to learn and you're able to sort of make those mistakes. So I feel lucky, if that's a confession, you feel lucky that it wasn't on camera and you can live to tell the story.
What's good advice to Sam and the Bulldogs boys at the end of season trips?
Don't go near the grappa. That's what I've learnt. So, thanks for that. You've gone home with the Pro FX Sharpshooter Slope Rangefinder.
So I got a second prize for
There we go.
That's it.
You can take that on the course with you when you head out next.
Is this a distance?
Yes, that's exclusive to our good friends at Golf Clearance Outlet. And for those watching or listening, only $166 at Golf Clearance Outlet.
Cheapest you'll find it.
Yeah, exactly right.
What are the team called from?
Golf Clearance Outlet.
Golf Clearance Outlet. Do they have a golf psychologist?
They might. There might be a market
They do
for
have
it.
a bit of an anger management area there.
Surely there's someone in your Aleda network, Luke, that can probably help with the psyche side of things.
Yeah, I need it. I seriously need it. It's I was lucky enough to do that Steve Kerr interview, and his wife, I was reading in the research for that, his wife has this saying around him, beware the fury of a patient man. You look at him, he's the coolest, calmest dude of all time. And I asked him, what does your wife mean by beware the fury of a patient man? And he said, well, 99% of the time I've relaxed and cool, but 1% I lose my shit. And he said, I actually think it's quite a valuable thing. And so I can sort of relate to that, Every now and then you're allowed to lose it.
It was such a good interview. The one thing that really surprised me, I didn't realise how late into his career he began coaching. He obviously watched his kids grow up and then got into coaching.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe that.
What a cool, incredible. He won everything in life, but his priorities and his values, you can just hear. He didn't entertain doing that because he wanted to be around his kids until much later. And he just had a great, 4 championships as a coach, 5 as a player, and those famous teams. But really humble, relaxed, awesome guy.
Well, we recommend everyone checking out that interview too. It's fully available on YouTube as well.
Oh, we actually haven't mentioned
I was going to say.
Also the podcast, Empowering Leaders. Can you tell us a bit more about that with a leader as well, the connection with the podcast?
Thanks for the plug. Yeah, it's really telling the story mostly of the people in our leader community, and lucky to see these interesting people around the world. And as I was saying to you guys before, I love this format. You guys do a brilliant job of it. You can tell how good you are at it, and it's I think you sit down and you generally feel like you get to know people in a great way, and it's been an awesome way to tell the story of our leader world.
Sure.
But you've had some incredible guests, like ranging from obviously there's sport and global sport, but then politicians and business people. It's incredible who you've had. So it's great to watch and see. Yeah,
no, thanks. As you know, there's great stories out there, and well done to you guys for starting this and getting it to it's an enormous success to get it to the level where you can give away golf clubs. I haven't got to that level.
We'll bring in the more goodies,
we're going to bring in more.
Yeah.
So
there's more to come.
There's more to come. So Jared will take those clubs away. As Jared takes those clubs away, we didn't actually plug the website, Dos. So we need to say golfclearanceoutlet.com.au. Stores all around Australia as well if you want to go in and actually speak to the guys. But of course, you can shop online.
I don't know if you saw, but they've actually opened one up down near our neck of the woods in
Mornington.
So brand new store over there, which we might need to head down there.
They are. Well, these guys are flying. But now, Luke, it's time for the dos&d Goodie Bag. So this is the infomercial we talked about.
So first up, Darce, we've got Milkman Australia. So Milkman, the legends, all things men's grooming.
Yes.
So in there, you've got your little toiletry bag, which you can take away with you next time. You've got the 3-in-1 body wash.
Yep.
You've got the texture powder, which we like to put through the hair.
We love that.
And which will go down well for you, Darce. And then we've got, I think, the natural deodorant as well, which is free from all the nasties. So it's just a roll-on, no aluminium, none of that nasty stuff. It's all natural. So head to milkmanaustralia.com. Use the code dos&d. How much do they get off?
20%.
20% off.
Make the most of that, especially as we come into, I know we're not quite there yet, but if you want to do your Christmas shopping early, this is a great recommendation for all the dads, granddads, sons out there.
Beautiful.
I worked with Eddie Maguire for 11 years, and you guys are in the same bracket of being. This is genius. I love it. There's more to come, is there?
There's more to come.
Great product, by the way. My wife Beck will be all over
Perfect.
that.
We like the natural stuff.
Yeah, bring out the next one. So what we'll do, Darce, is we'll maybe Jared can take the other ones off you, and you can take the Milkman back off him and give it to you off air. But what's next? We've got the sup, Dos.
Sup supplements. Are you in the gym or training much?
Look at it, Dos. He's in great nick.
That was a rhetorical question.
Yeah, that was a terrible question, wasn't it?
No, I am pretty lightweight these days. So I do something every day.
Creatine. I'm sure you've heard a lot about creatine.
Yeah, it was big in the late 90s
was it?
when we were playing. But it's making a big revival,
It is.
isn't it? In a big
It's,
way. So the gummies.
it's well and truly back. Yeah, well, it's in a different form now. So I don't know if you carry around your protein shaker or you have a pre-workout or a protein shake. This kind of eliminates that process. So it's pop a couple of these gummies. They're all HASTA approved as well. Thing. So everything's above board, ticked off by the governing bodies that need to be ticked off by. You can have them post and pre-workout, which is good. So head to supsupplements.com. Get your supplements today also at Woolies and Coles, but use the code dos&d for 30% off as well.
Make the most of that code, guys. It's a beauty.
I'm that impressed with you two. This is the best.
Well, let's bring out the next. So we go from the health side to the.
There needs to be a balance in life. There's all that health, but then a bit of fun as well.
Now this is actually fitting because in part of your confession you talked about being in Florence in Italy. Now this is a new drink, Tommy's. Now, this is a beautiful vodka spritz, but it's all the taste of Italians. These guys are based here in Melbourne with Italian backgrounds. One of the guys there has a thick Italian accent. It's really nice to listen to. But these guys run a shop, Luke, in Chapel Street called Freddy's. It's a pizzeria. It's a beautiful pizzeria. Yep. It's always packed. Have to book in weeks in advance. But they have Tommy's on tap, and they've brought out these drinks now in a can format. And we just want to send you home with a few of them for you to try, mate. And especially as we come into the hot weather now, it goes down a treat. So for those listening, if you want 10% off your Tommy's 01 at Tommy's.com.
So this reminds me of buying drinks for my daughter when she was underage.
That's
Before
it.
the main street of Sorrento's, and you're having to go in and order some watermelon guava spritz. I'm going, this is not good for me to walk out with these. But I would have been happy to buy these.
They
she would
actually
love
taste.
these.
They taste so
Yeah.
good. They go down a treat. So
Well done, Tommies.
And then finally, to wrap it all up, or second last, we should say, we've got Mitch Dowd. So this is they've given you a bit of a Christmas theme. I know it's very early. They wanted to go very early, but Mitch Dowd leads all comers when it comes to underwear, pajamas. So you've got some socks and jocks, mate. We've sorted you out in advance. So sorry to all your kids that were planning socks and jocks for Christmas. But these guys are the comfiest bamboo undies, aren't they, Darcy?
Don't forget to mention as well, Russell Athletic own Mitch Dowd. So I think we all know who Russell Athletic are, the leaders in sportswear. Mitch Dowd are from these guys.
They are. And you can use the code dos&d40 at either Mitch Dowd or Russell Athletic. You'll get 40% off, which is insane value, especially coming into Christmas. And inside there, mate, they've looked after you with your socks and jocks. I think there's a couple of Christmas themes in there too.
Take a breath. Last one.
Last one coming in now, Darcy.
Still going.
Last one. Last one.
This is the best I've ever
It's a bit embarrassing, Darce.
No, it's mate. It's the
Finish us
opposite.
off, Darce. Take us home.
Oh, well, you don't need to put your hand in there and pull everything out, but it's the dos&d Goodie Bag, which thanks to our naming right partner, Fleet Plan Hire Solutions, they've provided you with a golf towel, some golf tees, some golf balls. They love their golf, so they've got everything branded with their logo on it, golf-wise. And then, is there anything else in there?
Well, I think that bag, the tote bag.
Oh, the
Gotta
tote
mention
bag.
The tote
Tote
bag,
bag.
Dos.
Yeah,
The
golf
dos&d
glove.
tote bag. It's you can do your proudest shopping at all the markets with those. But it's just our little way of saying thank you for joining us today, Darce. Like we said off the top, we've been so excited to chat with you for a long time. We know how busy you are. And, really appreciate you making the time to come in here.
We spent 11 years on Breakfast Radio trying to encourage people to send free stuff to us. and I was alongside some of the best, Malloy and Eddie, and, would find it. Even if the pancake parlour gave us pancakes, we'd talk about them for 3 hours. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
We were easy to cash for comments. No problems at all, but you guys have taken it to a whole new level. And
So we're sellouts is what you're saying.
I love it. No. All I'm thinking is I'm going to lift my game. No one's ever got a gift when they've come on and had a chat with me. So, mate, thank you. Great to catch up. I enjoyed it.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Darce.